Hey there YouTube, welcome to King's Court. I'm Shrine King and this is another tank review slash guide of a World of Tanks tank. Now, particularly this one is the I think it's like AMX 49 MLE Liberty, right? AMX M4 49 Liberty. Sorry. They all have such great names. Um, and it's a premium, tier 8, and it's French. So, and it's a heavy, so if you are looking for a heavy premium, this is probably a very good one to pick, honestly. There isn't too many choices, but this one in particular to me is one of the best, so I can go ahead and start with that right out the door. Now for pros and cons to the tank, to kind of explain what's going on, or how to best play it, and note what your potential is with it. It has very good armor, very good. It has lower alpha damage than some of the other heavies, but it has better accuracy and typically higher penetration, which makes it very interesting to play, also because it's got a less reload, which means it's able to fire a little bit quicker. It still has gun depression, so it actually, on that benefit, it is able to play like some American heavies, but it has the armor in the front, which is actually better than most think it is, which makes it really nice. And yeah, it can be very strong, especially at the tier. Now, given at tier 9, tier 10, a lot of tanks are going to actually have a lot of struggles or hardships a lot of those tanks won't have as much struggles or hardships against this tank. This tank will actually struggle against them. So it's actually also kind of mobile for a heavy. You'll see it's getting up to like 29-30, which is pretty good. It's not the best. There are plenty of other heavies that get a lot faster than that, but it's not bad at all. Now, some of the cons to it though is while it is able to kind of move, it's not necessarily the best at turning. Now the gun turret is actually pretty good when it traverses, but the hull traverse is not the best. Then again, it is a heavy, so I wouldn't expect too much altogether. View range is actually pretty good in this tank. And then radio is probably where I say this thing takes a bigger hit. So view range is definitely a pro. The radio is probably a con. It's a little bit less than I would like. Usually, if I can get it up to like 600 to 750 meters, that's pretty good. You'll see that the 450 mark, which is your view range, that's the maximum your viewer can go. It looks like about another 50 or 100 past that, so you're only looking at like maybe 550 on your radio range. So what that means is this thing really does need to see combat. It's not going to be something you can really play kind of like, I mean, maybe you could play as like a support just behind the line, trying to support those who are more pushing. So that way you're out of sight but still within radio range to be able to see the targets. But I mean, honestly, that's probably not going to be the best play style with this tank. This tank, it has the armor, it has the capability, it has depression, so you might as well just play it pretty aggressive. So you'll see here, it's just I'm bouncing shots left and right. But again, if you're noticing, the tanks that are mostly shooting at me are like tier 7s. You had the tier 8 Lerva, but the Lerva was actually shooting at the hull, or I'm sorry, the turret. And that's one other thing I would make note too that's pretty cool about it, is even though you have the cupola, the cupola is actually not that bad of a weakness. So usually a cupola is so easy to penetrate. With this one, it's not. So that people can aim for it, but that's still actually going to probably bounce or get absorbed. But as you saw there, one of the things that kind of sucks is if you are giving the side or anything like that, someone does get shot in there, you're probably going to get ammo racks. Chances are fuel tank will get ignited as well. Those seem to be pretty common in the tank, so that's kind of a negative side to it. But I mean, honestly, hopefully as a heavy, you're not trying to show your side off. So how to best play it? Well, honestly, this match right here that you're watching is really showing off a lot of the strengths to the tank. So if your mobility is definitely something that you can play to your advantage, being able to push or continue to push or even get around to help certain flanks. But The armor, honestly, this thing, so by the way, for those who are heavy players, you always know that there's a typical angle that typically works really well. Most rule of thumbs like a 20% angle, and this one actually abides by that 20% rule. It actually, when at the 20%, has pretty optimal armor. The only thing that you want to bear in mind is that the weak spot is the lower glacis, so even though it's not necessarily the biggest weak spot, because the armor on there is still not too horrible, if people get shots into it, especially at higher tiers, it's definitely they're going to go right through it. Also, with that said, even though it has good armor, it has really strong armor at its tier. Once you start going against tier 9s and tier 10s, typically what's going to end up happening is they're going to run premium ammo against you, and they're going to go right through your hull, like even the upper glacis. Because while the upper glacis is thick and it has a slight angle, it doesn't have a sharp angle, so it's not actually going to bounce very often. It's actually just going to absorb. When you go against 9s and 10s running premium, you're looking at like anywhere up to like 270 to 300 millimeter plus penetration, and it won't hold up at that point. So bear that in mind if you're seeing that you're up against a tier 9 to tier 10 and they shoot premium. Even if you bounce it, just bear in mind you're probably not going to get a bounce very consistently, so you actually want to start playing more defensively or hidden. The other thing is to then put yourself at angles that will be deflections, so that's more about hiding your front and actually exposing your side just slightly and getting that very sharp degree angle. So like, you know, a 5 to 10 degree angle is all you're really turning, and you're backing up and letting them see that back end of you, so that way that when they shoot at it, it'll actually deflect right off, because they just don't have the appropriate angle to even have the shell be able to try to penetrate. So here's another one. So again, like I said, the mobility is definitely something you want to use. Easily can be a front liner, and then you want to again use, like, for especially with distance. Distance can actually be a good benefit for you if it is just distance shooting against other heavies. While your heavy, this heavy I should say, is accurate and able to shoot pretty far accurately, there are a lot of heavies that can't, and they suffer widely for it, especially for the distance shooting. Now, for example, tanks that you want to watch out for in a long range engagement is going to be like the T-34, the Lerva, a Progetto. Most of the tank destroyers can also be a problem, obviously, from long distance, because they're actually going to have generally pretty accurate guns. Those are most of the premiums I can think of that would actually do it. So the catch with the Lerva, if you can get its lower glacis, that's the best deal. Just bear in mind he's also accurate, so chances are he's going to be aiming for yours as well. Which basically that's the counter to you. It's basically a sniper just as good as you are. So you see here, like, I'm using the terrain. I've got that like 20 to 30 degree angle. It does leave my plate out there for exposure, but because of the angle, people will either bounce it, or even if they actually tried to penetrate, it's pretty thick, so they actually won't penetrate. Now, obviously, like I said, with the tier 8 or tier 9s and tier 10s, you're pretty typically it's going to be wherever they're running premium. You're going to have trouble. One tanks that you need to worry about that wouldn't necessarily have to run premium was example like the T-34 is like that's the reason why I would actually worry about it. Not necessarily about the accuracy, it's the fact that the penetration on its round is high enough even on a standard round that it will most likely pen right through you. ISU 152, if it has the big gun, the penetration on that is really high and it will kill you. Well, it will most likely penetrate you. Another one is, I call it the Roomba. It's the Rumbatel German tier 8 premium, or not premium, sorry, tier 8 tank destroyer. I want to say the smaller gun. I think it's the smaller gun. Actually has really high penetration. So it's like about 500. I think it's like 550 normal or average alpha damage. So that's another one you want to be very careful with. I do believe the Chinese tank destroyer line is the same deal. So if you see one of those, which are WZ somethings, those are going to be pretty same or typical deal. I'm pretty sure at tier 8 it actually gets a really high penetration as well, which means that it can definitely go right through you, but they're not as accurate. So at least you have that going for you for possible deflection. But again, if they manage that shot, it's going to go through. And they don't really have to aim at hard spots either. They can just aim at like your hull. Other than that, most tanks actually shouldn't be too bad, but like I said, obviously, you know, 8 or 9s and 10s is kind of what you're going to see. So while this tank is really strong, or actually I should say overall, what I would say is that this tank is really strong. I do highly recommend anybody who's interested or likes heavies to pick up this tank, especially since it is French, right? So like there's not very many to choose from, and the French heavy line is actually kind of nice for damage output. And also a very interesting playstyle because they're a little bit different. So try to, I mean, all the typical stuff that you'd expect to see with heavies is you want to stay by, like, you know, cover, like here you'll see the rocks and stuff like that. Use hills to your advantage because you actually have depression. You can actually aim in and snipe on a lot of enemies that have, you know, like might be normally hard to penetrate, but you can actually pick out their weak points. You're looking at a 20 to 30 degree angle. You'll see here, I'm not getting any real support from my team. The enemy is though. He's getting a lot of support, and I have people that are just sitting back there. They just ain't really doing anything. And it's just, yeah, and that happens. So that's pretty much the gist of it for the review. Also the guide. I mean, like you said, like you can see here, it's just about making sure you properly angle. Aim for your targets. I mean, obviously you'll see here the big mistake here is that I was not staying already safe, so that kind of cost me. You want to stay already safe. So again, feel free to like, subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Oh, and this one actually has a little bit longer to go, but you're more than welcome to watch it. But for the aspect of the voice, or the yeah, for the voicing, it's just gonna stop here. Okay.